Thank you so much for joining our session today, Designing for Success in Sustainability, using behavioural science to fight for a better planet. A very kind of quick overview of what we're going to cover, a little bit about why we're here, why this is an interesting topic, some of the challenges with sustainable innovation, how we use design principles to overcome some of those challenges, and then we finish off by giving you a little bit of hope. So our overarching question is how to design sustainable innovations consumers will buy and love. A very quick introduction. Firstly, myself, nice to meet you. I'm Becky Ingram, a Director of Sustainable Innovation and Behavioural Science at Kantar. Dr. Nicki Morley, who is a Global Sustainable Innovation Lead at Kantar. And then we've also got Professor Roberto Verganti, who is from the Stockholm School of Economics and Harvard Business School. So why are we here? I think it's very kind of fair to say the world is at an inflection point. So David Attenborough and Prince William have bring the climate change and sustainable issues to the mainstream. Climate change is very real. We have got global warming, the melting of the polar ice caps, we've got bushfires across the world, and we are losing species faster than we can even imagine. There is a moral obligation to take for the environment, and thus there are also sustainable benefits for society as well. But there's not only a moral obligation to do something, there's also a commercial opportunity. Sustainability is not just the right thing to do, it is also essential for business growth. There is an estimated $382 billion worth of untapped opportunity in just our most kind of interested in sustainability at the moment. There's a massive economic opportunity. Plus, not only do we as kind of marketeers kind of have a role to play, consumers are wanting us to take action as well. 88% of consumers want brands to help them be more sustainable. So therefore, we've got an environmental need to act. We've got money to tap into, $382 billion. And then there's a consumer demand as well. 88% of consumers want us to act. I think it's absolutely fair to say that this triangle really says to us the time to act is now. But some brands are actually doing something, which is fantastic, but they don't always get sustainable innovation right. Although doing nothing is absolutely not an option, there are some challenges with sustainable innovation. So we've got a few of these on the screen at the moment. The first off, wooden toothbrushes that are uncomfortable to hold, hard on the gums. Not quite as great as those toothbrushes which is, really easy to use, really nice to hold in our hands. Those plastic ones which aren't so good for the environment, but actually are just more efficacious and a bit easier as well. Paper straws which can't be recycled and dissolve in the mouth. You go to your favourite fast food restaurant and you can't have your favourite milkshake because your straw's melting. Shampoo bars that don't lather up, so we've all kind of that luxurious feeling when we're trying to wash our hair with traditional shampoo and conditioners. So some brands are overcoming this with these sustainable bars, but they don't give us that lovely feeling. And then finally, we've got another example of natural deodorants which leave you a little bit smelly on a hot day. So they are better for the environment, but not so good for the cause in which they are trying to help us with. So these brands have tried their very best to do the right thing, but it's really challenging. So where did the innovation journey go wrong? Brands focus on making the product sustainable, but they remove the benefits for the consumer. That idea of comfort, luxury, convenience, efficacy. Overall, they ask the consumer to compromise. And we have identified the 3 C's, factors that are persistently undermining the most well-intended sustainable innovations. They are higher costs, lack of communication, and a lack of convenience. So these things typically are the things that are the pitfalls in the sustainable innovation journey.
Thanks, Becky. It's so important to overcome these 3 C's to make it really easier for people to be sustainable. But in actual fact, it's more than that. Sustainable products and services need to be meaningful. Sustainability alone is rarely a compelling benefit. And so I was delighted to be able to speak to Professor Roberto Verganti from Harvard University on how we look for new meaning to drive penetration of sustainable products and services.
We've heard from Becky that the challenges that clients are facing when it comes to sustainable innovation, we see lots of clients trying really hard to be sustainable and potentially underestimating the fact that lots of things are getting in the way of people choosing sustainable innovations. The reality is that sustainability alone often is rarely the most compelling benefit. We need to not only make it easy, but we also need to make it extremely meaningful. Now, Roberto, you and I have worked together in the past a number of times. And I know you'll really help clients to try and find new meaning. And so what I'd really like to understand from you is, what does new meaning in sustainable innovation actually mean?
First of all, I'm very happy to share my reflection here. And and glad to reconnect on what is meaningful to people. When people use things or buy things, they always search for meaning. This is a normal characteristic of the nature of life of people. So for some people, what we call the active, sustainability is meaningful per se. So it's a way they find their own identity, a way they find their mission in life. It's symbolic also toward others. But for most people, those who are not active, meaningfulness is connected to how much a product fits into their lives, their aspirations, how they live. And sustainability is not necessarily the top priority, what they think of what is their aspiration in life. So these are big differences. For some of the users, meaning is sustainability, but for some is not.
Brilliant. And no, it's brilliant that you pick up on the difference between sort of the actives and those who are sort of more what we call believers or considerers. Now, just for sort of reference, sort of across Europe, only 13% of people are actually actives. Actually, sort of the majority are actually what we call believers and considerers, who, as you rightly say, are driven by other factors and life gets in the way, but they are certainly motivated by other factors. But data suggests there is still headroom, even in the most actives, to really try to drive growth in this space. But tell me, Roberto, tell me more about the benefits of finding this new meaning in sustainable innovation.
Yeah, I think this is a very important point. As you said, the segment of active is not huge. And personally, because we all want to change the world in a more sustainable way, that's one way. But given the segment is small, we cannot change the world by just thinking about that. So I see three possible strategies to address sustainability and how it's meaningful to people. One is what I call sustainability as a must-have. A must-have means, okay, we need to have it. I mean, it's typically sustainability that is driven by regulation and is regulated. Every company needs to do it. Every users need to change their behavior to comply with it. And this will not make any difference in competitive advantage. We simply say, okay, we can play the game. The second one is what I call sustainability as a performance. And this is what the kind of sustainability that target the active. And here we need to be a little bit careful, because in this case, active people in sustainability, the 30%, they don't just want a sustainable product. They want the most sustainable product ever, because that is really meaningful. If we need to be true to the meaning of things, we don't need to give them a sustainable product, but the best in the category in terms of sustainability. This is very important, because it doesn't simply mean, okay, now we make our product sustainable. We need to be extremely sustainable. The company like this can be Patagonia, for example. I mean, the entire company is designed around that. It's not just an add-on. Another interesting thing about this is that in this case, I mean, whenever we do innovation, there is a trade-off. In this case, basically, our approach is to bring the burden of sustainable behavior into the customer. Okay, so there are behaviors that are sustainable and there are behaviors that are more pleasurable. Okay, in this case, I bring the burden of changing behavior to the active because they want to change behavior. They find it pleasurable to behave in a sustainable way. But then there is the large majority of customers. And in this case, I talk about a strategy of sustainability as a gift. What does it mean? It means that in this case, we create the most meaningful product ever for people who is not driven by sustainability. It's driven by other things, aspiration, love. They want to have, I don't know, a fashionable life. They want to look good. They want to be healthy. Whatever is the meaning they search in life. And we design the best product for that meaning. They use this product, they buy this product, and surprise, oh, look, it's also sustainable. And in that case, sustainability appears as a gift. We didn't ask for that, but it's a delight. In this case, we don't need to have the most sustainable product in the market. We need to have the most meaningful according to the other meaning they have. And most interesting, we don't ask them to take the burden of a change of behavior on themselves. So we make it pleasurable and sustainable. And we don't take pleasure out of the way. Of course, this is more difficult for us because we need to take the burden of the trade-off. Instead of say, okay, dear customer, you solve the problem by changing your behavior. Instead, we say, no, we solve the problem. That's the gift that we give to you. You don't need to change behavior. We make it sustainable. And of course, in terms of innovation process, that's really more challenging.
Brilliant. That's great. And actually fits very nicely with a lot of the data that we've got to suggest that in actual fact, consumers think that manufacturers should really take action and take some of the burden alongside governments. And as you say, it really is quite a difficult challenge. Certainly for our clients, their organizations, there are lots of things getting in the way. And we really need to help our clients to sort of think about the imperative of doing this. So, Roberto, tell me, what's the risk of not doing this?
But the risk of not doing this is always when you create a product that is not meaningful, then you are in trouble. And you're in trouble because you're out of fit with the life of people. So, and I come back what we said before, sustainability is, I start from there. So I really believe in sustainability, but especially because I believe in sustainability, the only way to make a world that is sustainable is that people find it as a gift. It's really, we need to make things that are meaningful for them. If you don't do that, if you do things that are not meaningful, there is that maybe a little segment will move, but you lose the big next wave of changing. And society is changing this moment. We know that society is changing. There are new generations coming in, Generation Z, that has totally a different way of thinking. And by the way, the Generation Z in a way is a quintessential non-active in a sense that they take sustainability for granted. Of course, it needs to be sustainable, but that's not enough. The one thing that, and the pandemic has changed the way of giving people, the way people give meaning to things. So there are many things that are changing how things are meaningful. And in many product categories, if we really think about this, the meaning of those categories are being created even in the last century, especially in fast-moving consumer goods. So they really don't fit into the life of people anymore.
And I absolutely love this idea of sort of sustainability as a gift, and hopefully that's something our clients will really take from this conversation today. Now, what they're really interested in is there are some brands who are doing this well. Can you give me some examples of ones that you've seen that actually have really started to embody this idea of new meaning and having sustainability as a gift?
Yeah. Take three, which is, one is Tesla, is obvious and trivial, but I've been there for a long time. I remember the concept of the electric car and the sustainable car has been around for a long time. I remember an attempt in France to build cars that were electric. Fiat had the Panda, which is electric. Every company had a little bit of a goofy electric car. But it was really a goofy car. So the idea is exactly the car for the active. Okay, so people who compromise on the car to move electric. Tesla totally changed the parameter. I said, you know what? You don't buy an electric car because you want to be sustainable. You buy an electric car because it's cool, because that's an acceleration you never tried in your life. If you push the accelerator in a Tesla, you get squeezed into the seat. And then, by the way, it's also electric. But electric because it's better. So that's a classic example of sustainability as a gift. Another example, Rent the Runaway. I don't know if you know, Rent the Runaway is a startup actually funded by two alumni of HBS. And their basic idea is that why should you buy a dress, especially nowadays that you have Instagram and so on, and you spend a lot of money to go to a party, but then you take a photo, and that moment you cannot use the dress anymore because next time people, you're using the same. So why don't you rent dresses, especially for big events? So the meaning is not sustainability. The meaning is I want to have a different dress every time I go to a party. But of course, it's also sustainable because, instead of having this dress in your wardrobe doing nothing 99.9% of your time, that dress is used only when you need it. The last one is HelloFresh. You probably know it. It's organized food delivery. But they don't present themselves as a sustainable company. They present themselves as a company that helps you live a better life, more organized. But of course, there is much less food that is unused, and you save much more in terms of food that is not throw away. So there are all companies that are sustainable, but they are not they are meaningful not because of that. They're meaningful for another reason.
They're lovely examples, and yeah, I wish I could afford a Tesla. I think one of the things we have with our clients is sometimes they're not what I would call born good, and certainly those are examples of brands that are almost born good, born sustainable with new meaning. What tips do you have for sort of our clients who perhaps are trying to pivot across and less born good? You know, what advice would you have to them in thinking about how they get to their new meaning?
The first advice that I honestly believe that every company is born good.
Fair point.
And it's not born sustainable, maybe, but
yeah, and that's the reference. Yeah.
I totally share what you say. But it's just to compensate and give a hope to those who listen, because, and this is very important because nowadays I see many corporations that make purpose statement. It risks to be a little bit empty statement. And remember that the way you change the world is through the products and services you do. You don't need to be a sustainable company. You need to be a company who makes sustainable, you make meaningful products and services that are also sustainable. And that's the way you change the world. And luckily enough, there is a process to do that, to understand how to make things that are meaningful. This process we have been practicing for about 15 years through our research on the meaning of things. And there is a book that is titled Overcrowded with MIT Press that explains this process of how you can find meaning. Just maybe a couple of hints just to, that would be great. We've been learning. The first one is whenever you have situations like this, customers rarely help. We know this, there is a lot of research to show this, starting from Clayton Christensen and disruptive innovation. I mean, the more you get close to user and you even ask them what they find meaningful or not, the more in reality, you get trapped in solving problems of the past. And this is very important, especially for sustainability. The problem, if you look at sustainability as a problem, no worries, there is regulation that deals with that. But the role of leaders and company is not to live in a problem-solved future. We need to live into a design future. We need to imagine, forgetting a little bit how we live. We will never create a Tesla trying to solve the problem of ghost exhaustion pipes. You will never get there. You just get a better exhaustion pipe with less pollution, but never an electric car. You need to imagine new possibilities. So customer will never ask for a Tesla, but then Tesla does it and they love it. This is the first thing. Second thing, whenever you get into this journey, it's very difficult you get it right at the first vision. The creation of meaning is a process of continued reflection. You try first, but then you need to meet other people, external expert. We do this thing that we call interpret a lot, that is very inspiring. And it's a little bit annoying because you see people that see things different than you, and that's the trick, because the capability to bring different slices together is what really enables you to say, okay, this future that I see, maybe it's not the right one, but if I bring together all these other elements, now I see it better. And I go in a little slightly different direction, but I feel more robust, because when there are different experts, they start to see things that fit together, probably we are on the right track.
Brilliant. Now, the great news is that we've been trying this out, and actually we've been on this journey many a time with you, and so at Kantar we're able to partner with Roberto to really help any client that's interested to really drive that new meaning. What's interesting as well is we also look at how to drive that adoption as well. So thinking about how to make it not only meaningful but also easy to find it, for example, for those actives. How do I actually point out that the sustainability is a gift, is actually part of that? How do I ensure that it's rewarding as well? How do I ensure that my product delivers on the meaning I've set out to deliver? So the good news is we're certainly able to sort of solve that. But thank you so much today, Roberto, for talking to us. It's been an absolute delight. And hopefully people will really take away this idea that sustainability is very much a gift that we are responsible for giving to our consumers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to interact with you. Ciao.
Ciao.
But there is hope, isn't there, Becky?
There absolutely is. So as both Nicki and Roberto have spoken to, within society, consumers have different levels of engagement with sustainability, and therefore they have different needs and influences on their behaviour. So we've got our actives on the left-hand side. 13% of consumers across Europe are engaged with sustainability to the extent to which they are actively choosing sustainable products, even if it means that sometimes they have to make a compromise or a sacrifice, all the way down to our dismissers on the right-hand side. So 2/3 of consumers, to varying extents, are engaged with sustainability. Now, it can be very easy for brands and manufacturers and innovators to pander to our actives. They are a growing cohort of consumers. However, to really shift the dial, we need to think about our middle set, our believers and our considerers, those people who are engaged with sustainability, but sometimes find it hard to make the right choices and to realise the value of their good intentions. So, for our actives, they want to make a difference and show others the difference they are making. And they are actively choosing brands which enable them to do this. And in turn, we can see on our slide here that the brand sales are going up. So we are both helping the brand and the environment and delivering on the benefit to our consumers. Whereas to motivate our believers and our considerers, we need to find new meaning beyond sustainability. We need to make it convenient for them. We need to think about quality, taste. And there are brands who are doing this really well. As Roberto has spoken to, Tesla is a fantastic example of this. They make fast, high-performing, fantastic cars, which also happen to be sustainable. Swell is another really fantastic example. So they make water bottles which remove plastic from consumption in society. They enable consumers to personalise the bottle and therefore walk around with bottles which really fit into their personality, into their lifestyle, and therefore they are doing a good thing for society, but they also enable people to feel good. And then finally, we've got Tony's Chocolate. They're fantastic tasting chocolate, really aesthetically pleasing packaging, and in the background, they are fighting some of the issues within the production channel. So therefore, they're creating a fantastic product, a quality product, and they are giving us the gift of sustainability. So these are all brands which are helping consumers to be more sustainable, but not having to make any sacrifices on the product choice. So there is a pathway for success, and hopefully we've alluded to that today. Now, if we remember nothing else, it's that doing nothing is not an option. There is a societal need, there is a consumer demand, and there is economic potential. So focus on reframing the problem and solution, finding out what is easy, meaningful, and rewarding in your category for the consumer cohort that you're going after, from our actives to our believers and our considerers. And then underpin it with sustainability and ensure that you align your sustainable credentials to your brand purpose. So we at Kantar, along with Roberto, can kind of help you on this. And if you remember nothing else, think about starting as you mean to go on. Don't just try and retrofit your kind of innovation at the back end. To ensure you do this, really focus on that kind of scoping and understanding phase. Think about what are the factors influencing choice and your needs in the category at the moment of consumption. Then think about how do you design innovations which tap into this need. Innovations which are meaningful, rewarding, and which don't ask consumers to compromise. We can co-create with them with consumers and use our kind of design principles framework to enable us to get here. We can predict how well these innovations are going to do in market with our kind of predict toolkit. And then we can also look at how well they've done in market and to the extent to which they have created that kind of behavioural change. Ultimately, this journey enables us to ensure that we are creating sustainable innovations that will deliver on their promise and that consumers will buy and love, and we also help the planet at the same time. So thank you for listening to us, and let's go to a few kind of questions from our audience. So we've got some absolutely fantastic questions coming through from our audience. The first one, Nicki, is, are there any principles or guiding principles for sustainable-led innovation to help some of the brands who are watching and the clients who are watching in their innovation journey?
Absolutely. So we talked about it in the conversation with Roberto. It's all about making it easy, overcoming those 3 C's. But it's also really important to be meaningful, which we talked about. And that meaningful can be different to different people. So for certain people, they have an intrinsic motivation around sustainability. For others, actually, as we've talked about, the believers and the actives, it's much more about actually what's meaningful is perhaps the way I show up. We know, for example, that believers over-index in reusable plastic cups. They like to show others how sustainable they are. And then ultimately, it's got to be rewarding. If it's not rewarding, you're not going to build that future habit. So I think it's really important that, it's the easy, meaningful and rewarding are the real underpinning of driving behaviour change to create sustainable designs that people want to buy and love.
Yeah, absolutely. Which kind of leads us to one of our next questions, which is all around, and we talked in our presentation about brands who are tapping into the different kind of segments. Are there any examples of brands who are delivering to all 3 of our segments, our actives, our believers and our considerers, and doing so in a meaningful way?
Good question, actually. And obviously, Roberto talked about, I think, Patagonia, Rent the Runway, Tesla, all really good examples. The one I really like is Pangaea. They've reframed, they've thought about their new meaning. They are a material science brand. But what they do is they deliver, they make it easy to be sustainable. Actually, they make really nice clothing. And that's the important thing. They are really meaningful in the way that they deliver nice clothing that you want to buy and wear. And I guess it can be easier for some of the fashion brands.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly one of my favourite examples.
They're really shifting, I think, the way that the whole retail and kind of fashion industry are seeing, kind of moving away from kind of fast fashion to being more sustainable and meaningful.
Absolutely.
So one we've got here is all around, for brands who maybe haven't started on the journey yet, how do they start? What do they do? And I think, what would be really kind of critical here, what we would say is, really focus on the upfront part. Understanding, what do you want to go after, understand the consumer, what are the needs from the consumer, what is meaningful to them, and remembering that it might not be sustainability, as we said, it might be something else, and then tapping into that, creating, ideating for that, because if we really focus on the upfront and understanding the consumer, we're more likely to have something which is, beneficial to them in the back end, and it's going to drive that kind of behavioural change and help the environment ultimately. So another one we've got here is, why is it so hard for some big brands to roll out sustainable options at scale? So for example, Dove deodorant packs being available in the US, but not available here in the UK.
Oh, difficult
really
one.
It is a
difficult one to ask. And actually, it's fantastic. I love that innovation. And I'm hoping that we see
we
it
do get
soon.
it on the shelves,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. It is hard. I think it's back to this principle of born good brands. Born good brands find it easier. They are born that way. And so I think it's about big organisations that really have to put sustainability at the heart of their organisation. Sometimes they have to undo some of the stuff that they've done, their supply chain they've got to look through. So I think it's just a more difficult ask, but I think it's one that they have to take on. And they have to look at sustainability as, well, what is the actual benefit? If I start changing and playing around with my formulation, could I actually deliver a better benefit?
Yeah.
And I think it's about realising that, sustainability has to be a part of that and has to be that gift, as sort of Roberto says. But it is more of a challenge, but it shouldn't stop them. And lots of, big companies have got sustainable brands that they're nurturing and developing alongside their bigger brands. And hopefully they're testing and learning from that. And they will bring that across to their bigger brands.
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? I think ultimately as well, what works in one part of the world and for one culture won't necessarily work in other parts. So actually we need to understand what are the cultural nuances and therefore what will work in this market. But ultimately, sustainable-led innovation is a big challenge, and it's needed. We have to act. Absolutely, we need to act now. But it is challenging. So please don't lose heart if you're on that journey and it's taken a bit of time.
Yeah, and like you said, doing nothing, it's not an option. You really do need to sort of invest in this because ultimately, we've said this before, ultimately all innovations will be sustainable one day.
Yeah.
So, you have to start embarking on that journey and just keep testing and learning and trying, and moving forward with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So another one we've got here, which we've kind of touched upon already, is what is the biggest barrier to sustainable innovation? And it's hard to name just one, I think, barrier. There's lots of kind of barriers. We talked about the 3 C's, cost and convenience, But is there anything else which really kind of comes to mind, or examples of kind of the biggest barrier to sustainable innovation or sustainable-led innovation?
Sometimes it can be internal. We talked about, there's the challenges of, where do you actually start?
Yeah,
and
silos within
organisational
organisations.
silos as well is another one. So I think you have to get yourself organisationally geared up as much as, and then thinking about the consumer and really trying to break down the barriers. And I think the biggest barrier is often the consumer behaviour.
Yeah.
So really, really understanding that consumer behaviour and what will drive that change, as we say, is it easy? How do you make it easy, meaningful and rewarding to drive that consumer behaviour change?
Yep. We've got a really interesting one here, which is how much of this should be brand-led versus how much should be government and regulation enforced. So we've obviously touched on earlier on in the session today on Kantar Talks around the regulations that are coming in for kind of sugar, kind of in the FMCG category. If I can kind of kick this one off, in essence, sustainable-led innovation will be influenced by government, by regulation, by the fact that we have got global warming, and also by consumer demand. I don't think we can necessarily pinpoint and say there's one thing which is influencing the need for sustainable-led innovation and for the creativity in this space. But any kind of else to kind of build on that other than it's kind of three-pronged.
Yeah, and I wish I had the data from our Global Foundational study. We've got lovely data that actually reports what they think about sort of brands' responsibility and government's responsibility, but it's certainly both. But it's very high on the agenda is the role of brands and sort of consumers really wanting brands to help them, but absolutely the government has to be involved, and actually a collaboration between the two actually to really drive it and to sort of get brands to working together with governments.
Yeah, and ultimately it's about, brands and government helping consumers to do the right thing.
Absolutely.
And realise their good intentions, as we would say. So I suppose then, if we kind of finish off then, Nicki, any final kind of comments or suggestions to the audience, key takeaways from this session? We've covered quite a lot, but if they kind of remember just one thing, what would be your kind of critical thing from this session?
Easy, meaningful, rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I think mine would be, that sometimes sustainability isn't the hero of sustainable-led innovation. Let's find what is kind of meaningful for our consumers, depending on who they are, where they are in the world, and then ideate for that, and then give consumers the gift of sustainability. So guys, thank you so much for listening. Really kind of appreciate your time, and it's a thank you and a goodbye from us.
Thank you.